Welcome back to the Kirk Miller Podcast. Today's guest is, well, I'm going to call him Superman. He'll probably play that down, but is the super impressive Tom Otton. He is someone that a friend of mine mentioned, it was around about a year ago now, Tom, when I was exploring speakers for our Built to Last event. I always look for inspirational speakers who can add value to our Built to Last community, and yeah, my friend Katie said you have to connect with this guy Tom. Took a little while, eventually hunting you down, but you can elaborate on anything I've missed, Tom. But Tom is an entrepreneur. You're a TEDx speaker. You're an ultra endurance athlete, cancer survivor. Above all else, I see, well, just a perception from your social media, you're a fantastic family man, which is just as important as all the other accolades and more important. But why I wanted to bring you on, Tom, is you're clearly a high performer of high performers, and I just want to unpack today your journey, what's helped you build success in business, what drives you in things like some of these crazy challenges you do, but also how you fit all these different pieces of the puzzle while still building a beautiful family. It's, even from a selfish point of view, I just always love to know, how does this person do that? But more importantly for the listeners, what nuggets can you take from Tom today? If there's any area of your life that you feel is out of sync, or you know you can perform better in business, or you want to be braver with a certain decision, you want to be healthy but can't find the time, blah, blah, blah. And just as Tom's shared in one of his quotes, and there's so many great quotes we're going to go through today, help you live life on your own terms. But one of the quotes that I listened to and watched on one of your TED Talks was, if you don't mind us kicking off here, is,
go for it.
It's the excuses you are making today that will be the regrets at the end of your life. I had goosebumps when I watched that, by the way.
I appreciate that.
It really did. And Tom, just to shoot from the hip to start, was there a defining moment that shaped this mindset? And was this always in you, or was there a turning point?
Great question, and thanks for inviting me on. Firstly, look, social media is a wonderful thing. As I was saying off camera, it is a highlights reel. It's not all roses, trying to fit everything together. But I try my best, and if I can help any of your listeners, I'm very much glad to be here and to do that. So, to answer your question, I was diagnosed with cancer a number of years ago. I was very fortunate. I've spent time. Family members have got cancer and have had cancer. In the context of them, I was able to move through that process pretty quickly, and I won't get into too much detail. But from a mental standpoint, there was obviously a period where I was given a diagnosis, and then there was a period between that and then coming out the other side of it. And within that time frame, it will affect anybody, because you're not sure if you're still going to be here within X period of time, right? So you start to look at everything very differently. At the time, I was quite immature emotionally. So what I mean by that is, it was a survival instinct for me that I packed it away in a box, and I tried to bury it. So as soon as I came out the other side of that process, I tried to pretend like it never happened, because it was how I was dealing with it. It was such a scary thought that I wanted it far away from me. So I put it in this box and I pushed it away. It was only a few years later I started to actually unpack that. I was a bit more, I would say maybe I'd matured a bit. And I really thought through that time, and I was like, what did that mean? And I spent time with it, I sat with it, and I feel that's when I got the most from it emotionally, which was really understanding if that is the case, and it's the reality, right? We all live, we're all going to die. That's that's the universal human truth. So I sat with that, and it definitely shaped my thinking around what I wanted to get out of life. One of the things I always go back to is wanting to squeeze as much life out of life, right? And I think that one of the issues we have in society today is people are coasting. And the reason they're coasting is because they actually haven't defined what they want. So if you don't know where you're going, then how do you make the decision whether or not to go left or go right with a particular decision? Because it doesn't matter, because you actually haven't defined what you're trying to achieve, where you're trying to get to. And to go back to some of the points you made in the introduction, how do you kind of fit all these things in? It starts with really spending time with, what do I actually want out of life? And for me, a lot of that came with like, okay, I want to experience everything. And I'm wired that way, and I think you are. You know, we've spent a bit of time together this morning, and I can see that in you, which is like everything that I do, I want to try and do the most of it, like get the most out of it, experience all of the things, right? So for me, adventure is a big part of who I am. That's manifested itself in ultra marathons. It's not the running. It's not like I'm not trying to run on a road and get a time, and you know, I'm not that phased about that. Ultra marathons means mountains, lakes, rivers, remote places, the Arctic, all of these kind of wild, interesting places. So the running is the kind of, I suppose it's the way that I'm getting there. But the reality is I'm just trying to experience the planet, the earth, the world. How am I going to places that not many people have been to? So that's, for me, that's kind of that's how it all manifested. But it started back with that going through that process of being diagnosed, finally unpacking it, really understanding that life is very finite, and that's a reality for all of us. I'm blessed with having been diagnosed because it drilled that truth into my mind in a way that possibly if I hadn't been through that process, I wouldn't think the same way. And many people that are fortunate not to go through that process, the unfortunate side is they don't get that. They don't get that imprinted in their brain, but the reality is we're all going to die. So while that sounds quite morbid, the reality is, isn't that really freeing to be like, well, we're here for a finite amount of time. Like, don't you want to literally squeeze everything out of every experience that we have here? So that's try and be the best with your family and create whatever that looks like for you. With your business, do I just want to coast along and just play things safe and you know, take the safe option when I'm trying to build a business? Or do I roll the dice on this and just think, you know what, if it doesn't work out, I'll try something else. Let's see what could happen. Go into everything with a positive mindset, because the reality is, how can you have a negative mindset when you know you're only here for a finite period of time? Like, just approach it with just the reality that it is. Like, this is a gift. We're here for a period of time. We have a gift. Like, let's experience as much as we can. And I take that into my decision making, into my business, into my life, into my family, into my friends. And I don't want to leave anything on the table. Any experience, any emotion, the highs, the lows. That's who we are as humans.
Obviously, that shaped a massive shift in your mindset when the cancer happened. How were you different before? Or if you can give some context on where was business at before that happened? Where was personal relationship maybe at where that happened? Where was health? Because obviously you've done so many crazy things since, but what was the difference before? Where was life before and where was life at?
Sure. I think the most relevant thing is, where's my mindset before? Because I was still working a job. So there's something.
Because I know obviously you've built a multi-million-pound company now and blah, blah, blah. But where were you professionally at that point?
So I was running a corporate marketing department, and it was just prior to the global financial crash. So I was made redundant in that. So I lost that job around about 2 years after the cancer diagnosis. And then I decided, and maybe I say maybe, this would have been part of the kind of the new thinking post that situation, is I set my own business up. Because again, I was like, well, do I want to try this, or do I want to just stay in a job and stay safe? So I set the business up, and you know, that's probably a different story we'll get onto. But to go back to answer your question, it was, where was my mindset before that happened? And it was very much, I've been very fortunate to grow up as an expat in different countries because my parents work. I've bounced around a lot of places. Now, as we were saying earlier, that's an incredible experience to have as a child, and I'm very grateful for it. But nothing in life is binary, good or bad. everything that happens to you, there is some good in it, and there is some bad in it.
If you choose to look at it that way.
Yeah, so you just got to you got to understand both sides to it, right? Mm-hmm. So although I had an incredible upbringing, one of the downsides was the fact that I bounced around like 11 schools as a child. That's not a great thing, because
why?
The insecurity that it builds up, that you're constantly entering an environment where it already exists, like the friendship groups, the culture, the everything, and you're the new kid. You sound different, you might look different, whatever that might be. Sort of, and having to go through that once or twice is one thing, but having to go through that repeatedly over the course of your childhood is something very, very different. So, the mindset before the cancer diagnosis was try and assimilate wherever you can, try and fit in wherever you can. Now the problem with that is wiring you for average, right? Because if you just try and be like everybody else, you will be like everybody else. And if that's not what you want, then you're on the wrong path. So for me, understanding, excuse me, all the things I said earlier around wanting to experience everything in life, which is different to many people, I needed to rewire my mindset of it's okay if I don't fit in. Actually, it's a good thing. I don't want to be like everybody else in whatever particular environment I'm in. So what is next? What is more? What is bigger? What is bolder? What is, seek out the people that are doing things differently versus the people that I might be spending time with at that time. So it's you have to increase I suppose like the size of your thinking, the capacity and where you want to take things. So that was definitely a mindset shift, kind of before and after, from I want to fit in because it makes me feel more comfortable to I need to find something different because I want different results. Yeah,
no, this is great, Tom. For those people like you just alluded to who don't have that scare of guess what, you might not be here, whether it's in any form of trauma. What do people do? Because what do people do who are coasting, who are feeling average, but know they are capable of more, but they don't have this traumatic emotional event that can go, you know what, you're not here forever, burn the boat.
Yeah.
What would be your advice to someone who, because I this is a massive challenge I feel even with some of our clients who, there's something inside of them that knows they can become more, look better, feel better, perform better, take that chance. But there's that block. And like you just said, Tom, and this is why we're so obsessed with community and so built to last, so often it's because of the connections that people have, the environments they place themselves in, that puts a cap on what they're capable of. Because as we spoke before this episode kicked off, connection is a fundamental human need. The desire to fit in isn't a belief, it's not a value, it's what we have to do and find a tribe of some sort. So for listeners who know they're capable of more, but they haven't had this event, what would be your advice to someone?
I think it's twofold. So firstly, motivation is push or it's pull, right? So discipline is not going to get you where you want to be on its own. If I hadn't had this traumatic event, I hadn't gone through the process that I have, then for me it would be spending as much time as possible to define as tightly as possible exactly what it could look like, whatever that goal might be, whether it's the business that you want to start, the people you could be spending time with, what would your day look like if you were running the business of your dreams? If it's from a health and wellness standpoint, and you just don't feel great about yourself, you're a bit slow in your thinking and in your movement, and it's you can see the trajectory of your life. You're maybe getting a little bit older, and it's not the trajectory that you want because it's going downhill, and you can see all of your friends and they've already gone downhill, and you're like, shit, if I don't do something different, I'm going to be the same as everybody else here, and that's not what I'm looking for. I'd really spend time defining what it could be, because if you truly believe the destination, you really tightly define it, you truly believe that this is possible for you, then that will pull you towards it. And then you can start to wake up and you'd be like, I know exactly where I'm going. If you wake up every morning and you don't know where you're going in your health, from a career standpoint, an entrepreneurship standpoint, a health, family, whatever, if you haven't defined where you're going, as I said earlier, you're gonna be lost. How can you get up and know exactly what to do at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning if you actually don't have a destination that's mapped out? So I'd really start there. The second thing is what you've just alluded to around community and finding like-minded people. The reality is, if you've not made any conscious decisions over the course of your life as you've grown up, and look, I'm still very close with friends that I went to school with.
I understand.
Right. But if your friendship group was just given to you at some point, and you've made no conscious decisions since then to spend time with people that are more like the person that you want to become, you have a very limited chance of ever becoming those people. If you've spent time figuring out, okay, where do people spend time, hang out? How do I spend time with somebody that is, I mean, an obvious one is, okay, I'm unfit. I'm going to go and join a running club because the people at the running club, they kind of look and sound like I want to look and sound, right? So let's start there. Let's go and just join a club that has people in it that look like I want to look like or feel like or think like. And then that, you can map that across everything, right? You can map that across in the world of business. We have podcasts now, right? Mm. That wasn't always the case. You can spend time listening to people that have done the things that you hope to do, and you can start to think like them. Then you can start to find people in your community that are similar, and then you start to spend time. Now, as you know, because this is what you do, it's building a community of like-minded people, but you as an individual have to make that conscious decision of A, where am I trying to go? B, what do other people look like that have already been there or are currently there? How do I spend time with them? It's really I know it's simplistic, but it's not simple. It's certainly not easy. But if you can make that decision and then you can figure out how to spend time with those individuals, your life will change.
And it also requires you to be brave.
Yes.
Doesn't it? Because one of the strongest forces in the human race is a need to remain consistent with how others perceive you to be and the peer group you're currently within. And I think the reason you can add so much value on that subject is you said, didn't you? You went around all these different schools and you're trying to fit in because you want new friends.
Absolutely. It's an imposter syndrome, right?
Yes.
And especially when you're trying to level up, you'll feel like that. And and let's talk about that for a second, because if you don't feel like that, you're not pushing yourself enough. I feel like that all the time. It never stops. Yeah. It never stops. Because if you're constantly trying to level up, there are always people ahead of you in whatever area of life you're trying to improve. So you should always be feeling at some area of your life, and maybe not every area all the time because your head will explode, but consciously you're like, okay, this is an area I'm going to focus on. I'm going to spend time with these people. Yeah. In that room, you should be like, wow, they are way ahead of me. But I've just learned something today. Yeah. I went for lunch and learned something. We had a coffee and I learned something. All of a sudden you look back 24 months later and you're like, shit, I'm on this journey. I'm actually improving from where I was a year ago. And it's a good indicator. If you feel that uncomfort, it's a really good indicator that you're on the right path.
I couldn't agree more. And I think if you're being 100% authentic with yourself and you're really trying to break down, just like you said, what do I want my life to look like? What are the traits I need to embody? If you do approach a person or a new peer group that have got those traits and behaviours that you'd want to embody, you're not going to get pushed away from those people because they're going to be more aligned to, they're going to see in you.
Absolutely.
They're going to see in you. Yeah. Guess what? I was there once.
Yeah.
If you get friction, in my opinion, Tom, I'd love to know your opinion on this. If you get friction when you are maybe trying to explore a new peer group or make a new connection and you get pushed back or shut down, there's a strong chance maybe that might not be the right peer group for you.
100%.
And that's just feedback that you just need to explore a new one.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, honestly. Anyone that I've approached over my career, we'll talk about that from an entrepreneurship standpoint, that have been successful. And every time I've managed to get myself into a new room of people that are far more successful than me, one of the things that's really stood out is how supportive and accommodating they have been, because they see, to your point, they probably see a little bit of themselves in me 10 years earlier, trying to do this thing, trying to learn this thing, trying to figure it out. And they're like, oh, that's easy. You just do A, B, C, and D. And you're like, oh, wow, that's probably just saved me 3 months or 6 months and hundreds of hours and books and everything, because they're like, yeah, I've done that. I made all the wrong decisions that you're currently making.
Yeah.
So just do these things. You're like, wow. So it's twofold, right? It's the fact, to your point, you can identify the right people because they do want to help, because often once have become successful, if they're the right people, they're not walking around with an ego, because they don't have the insecurities of, I need to prove myself, I need to be the big dog. Like, any of that goes away if they're truly, authentically have succeeded, they're happy in themselves, and they're like, you know what, I want to help other people, because this is not a zero-sum game. So let's help others.
I couldn't agree more. And that, because if you reach out to someone, whether it's help with your health and fitness or business, and that person or that peer group has got ego attached to it, there's a strong chance that that person or peer group isn't doing things with integrity and with authenticity anyway.
Yeah.
Because if you're living in alignment with your true authentic self, then you would literally notice that person trying to do the exact same. So let's talk a little bit more specifically about business. Am I right in saying that you created Create Group in 2007? 2010, sorry. Yeah. So that was just after. Did you still have cancer during this period?
No, so that was prior to that.
Okay. Yeah. What scared you most about starting that business after having a normal job and obviously the challenge you went through? Or what was the biggest shift that made that possible?
Honestly,
and why Create Group?
Sure. So your first question about what scared me, honestly, it didn't. And this is something I think is a really good takeaway for people, is that the reality is most of the decisions that you make that you think are fundamental, if it doesn't work out, the whole world's going to end. The reality is that's not the case. Tim Ferriss talks about something called fear setting, which is a process of understanding where your fear comes from, because often it just comes from the black hole that you've not defined. So if it's coming from this black hole that you've not defined, it's scary, because you haven't spent time really thinking through how impactful is it. But if you say, okay, I'm going to go and start a business, I'm going to invest money, I'm going to invest time, it's going to, I'm going to give it this much kind of runway before I decide, okay, maybe it's not the right thing, whatever, however you process it. The reality is, if you really spend time defining, if it doesn't go wrong, what could happen, right? So what I mean by that is, if you had to go and get a job, where might you be able to get a job? How much might you be able to earn? What do you need to earn to survive? Could you move back in with your parents? Do you have a friend you could stay with? If you really define, if it goes wrong, it looks like this, and you write that out, you look at it and you're like, that's not so bad. That's not so bad. Like, the world's not gonna, I'm not gonna be on the street homeless, unable to afford to eat type of thing. Like that's not so bad. So one of the things I went through was understanding, what could it look like if it works out? And if it doesn't, what am I going to do? And because I defined that, obviously I out of those two routes, I had a preference. But the reality was, it wasn't be all and end all. It's not binary, and nothing generally is. So I wasn't scared, because I went through that process. I then invested everything that I could in terms of my time, my energy, my effort, to make it what it's become. And look, today we've managed to build an incredible business off the back of so many amazing people coming along on that journey, and collectively creating something.
So how did that business start, and then where are you at now?
Sure. So I lost my job in 2010. The global financial crisis took a little bit of time to get to Dubai. We were kind of like eating popcorn and watching the rest of the world on fire at one point. And we're like, wow, that looks really bad over there.
What happened to me?
Yeah, but Dubai seemed fine, right? And then all of a sudden it wasn't. And then there was like tumbleweed going down Sheikh Zayed Road. There was cars parked at the airport, and it was it was a mess. And then it was a tough time. So I lost my job. I did actually have another opportunity, and I could tell you the square meter that I was stood in the business center at the time, when I took a phone call from a recruiter to say that there was a job with Red Bull that was available, that they thought I was suitable for. They'd already spoken to them. They knew me, blah, blah, blah. It seemed quite likely. I went quiet on the phone, and I said to them, the lady, I remember, she even said, "Are you still there?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm still here." And I said, I'm not going to pursue this, because I'm going to try I'm gonna try the business route, and went down that. So, Create we're a strategic digital communications agency, working predominantly with government, semi-government organizations, 160 people across the region, 3 offices, Cairo, Riyadh, and here in Dubai, and it started from a single desk. The team, not myself, but the team's managed to position us to win Digital Agency of the Year for the last 3 years here in the Middle East, and just in December, on Christmas Eve, we were acquired by Stagwell Global, who are a NASDAQ-listed marketing services group, $2.5 billion company, 13,000 employees. So we've now become part of the Stagwell Group, and we are the representative digital transformation arm for the Middle East. So that's where we're at now.
Wow. And in what time frame has that been?
That has been... 15 years?
So not blood, sweat and tears.
Yeah.
Because I think there's so many people, whether it's to do with body, whether it's to do with business, are deluded with how long it actually takes to build something special.
I didn't know what we were doing for 5 years. I was just running around trying to make some money.
Well, that leads me to say, what's been the biggest mistake? Because we have many entrepreneurs and business leaders and stuff listening to this, watching this. What is there any specific mistake that comes to mind that you think, God, knowing what you knew now for the last 15 years, that you think, why did I do that?
Well, it's a great question. Over 15 years, I'm struggling to think of a mistake that I haven't made. I've made every single mistake you can think of. It's
or maybe
let me take it through stages. So in the early days, it was. This is probably the most relevant to most people listening. When you start out, often the mistake I made was I tried to do many things because I thought that at the time when you're starting out, you're surviving. Business is just survival. It doesn't matter what people say about, okay, you can have vision, mission, all these things. None of that matters if your business goes out of business. So the reality is, yes, you can have a plan, and that's a beautiful thing, but you need to make sure that you have cash in your business so that you can survive. When you get to a point where your business is strong enough that it's actually functional, then you can start to higher level thinking about what is the purpose of this organization, where are we trying to go, what are we trying to do. But if you spend too much time on that in the early days, and that's all you're consumed by, and you don't run your business, you won't last. And this is the reason why most companies go out of business, like 90-something% don't last. The first year, and out of the ones that do, you're talking about another 90% that don't last to 5 years. So to get to 15 years, like, you need to start out figuring out what does this this commercial engine look like, and then build on top of it. So for me, what I do now, and the positioning that we have, the mission that we're on, that didn't exist in the beginning. In the beginning, I'd lost my job, I was trying to replicate my job, I was trying to make sure that the people that chose to come and work for me in the early days were getting a decent, fair salary, and that they were happy, and that was, you're just running around with your hair on fire. To answer the question specifically, the mistake that I made was, I was trying to do too many things, and I mean that from a market standpoint. So I was trying to be everything to everybody, because I thought, well, these are all routes of income. They're all sources of income. So if I do this, I can make money there, and do this, I can make money there. The reality was, one of the fundamental decisions I made a few years in was I let go of my biggest client, because I said, at the time we were doing essentially like marketing consultancy for health and fitness brands, and it kind of started to kind of grow from there. About four years in, I pivoted and said, we're a pure digital agency. So I don't want like above the line marketing work. We're not going to be doing it. Like we're a digital agency. And whilst that was me cutting my nose off at the time, because my biggest client was paying me to do, it was actually Go Sport, and I was doing all the design work for all of the windows that they have in all of their stores around the region. It's quite basic churn work, but it paid the bills. But I had to make a decision to be like, I want to be in this space, and I understood by that point that I need to be referable. If you ask somebody, I'm looking for somebody that does X, you're going to refer the person that is a specialist at X, not the person that also does that plus 15 other things. So I realized that when I started to put out into the world that we were a digital agency, all of a sudden we started to be referred by people that were looking for digital agencies. Even though we could do the same service previously, we didn't specialize in it. And then I was like, we need to go deeper, not wider. And that was the mistake that I made. I was too wide, and when I started to go deeper in a small space, then I became the expert in that space. Now you compound your own learning over years and years, and now 15 years later, we're still in that space. Yes, okay, we're adjacent because the digital world has grown, but because we're in this space, we became referable, and then that's it. All of our business growth was word of mouth from a single desk to...
Literally just accelerate reputation.
That's it.
Yeah.
Because you become known for being really good at this one thing. And then once you're really good at that one thing, you can be slightly adjacent, but still in the same universe. So you're obviously selling more services to the same clients.
Yeah.
But if you're selling one thing to one client and one thing that's completely different to a different client, that's very limiting. Even though in an immature mindset, you think, oh, that's actually broader. I can make more money this way. I can build a bigger business. It's not the case.
It was a bit like, when I first got into coaching, I remember once, I felt so embarrassed. I was at this... biomechanics course, and this guy Luke Lehman, great guy, he was going around the room. He said, who do you coach, what do you do? And I'm like, I help people get in shape. Or it was just like, I'd help hit everyone.
You hadn't defined.
No wonder that I just started online coaching at the time. Things were a little bit sticky, so I can totally relate to. How about trying to be a master of one rather than a jack of all trades?
100%.
I totally get it. On business, obviously it's a totally different entity going from you by yourself to evolve into whatever 100 employees you said.
160 at the moment.
Okay, right. Who have you had to become? Because I can imagine, and I've fallen into this trap before, when you start the business, you're wearing all these caps and you think you know everything, I know that. How has your role evolved, and what is your role now in relation to the bigger picture of the business?
Yeah, look, you have to completely reinvent your business and yourself periodically as you go through that growth. We came through COVID, we were about 75 people going into COVID, 65, 75, somewhere around about there. COVID was tough for a short period of time for us. Now, I know it was very difficult for many people. I'm just talking from my particular experience. It was tough for a short period of time from a business standpoint, but then the world moved digital very quickly, and we were very well positioned at that time. So in the 14 months, I say post-COVID, I'm probably talking September of 2020 onwards. The 14 months from there, we hired full-time 100 people in 14 months. So imagine, everything broke. Every system was broken. We were set up for probably 50. We were already pushing that to 65, 70. And then all of a sudden we had an influx of 100 plus people, full-time employees. And we opened multiple offices. So we opened in Saudi. I was actually opening the Saudi office at the end of 2019, just before COVID hit. So that was embryonic, but it was there. And then I opened the Cairo office as well. So the growth in the business was obviously, it was exponential at the time. And being forced into completely reinvent, how does this business operate? What does it do? How do we do it? What are the systems, the processes, everything? And that continues as you continue to grow. Now we've gone up to, at one point I think about 205 was the most we've had in the business, and we've brought that back down to 160. We found we were a more efficient organization. We were bloated at a time because we were just throwing people at problems. We weren't sophisticated. So as we matured in the business, we've got a better system and a structure and a process. The reality is your mindset has to be, you have to be flexible. You have to know where you're going or where you want to go, but the route of how you're going to get there has to change based on the information you have in front of you. And that can be the same in the world of fitness. It can be the same in the world of business, anything. You define the goal, as we spoke about earlier, define the destination, but as new information comes up, you have to be able to adapt. Now, most businesses don't survive because they're not agile and they're not adaptable. They're not able to break down their way of thinking about how they do things in order to rebuild in a better way. Now, it was so high risk bringing 100 people in. And it was a risk that I didn't really perceive at the time. We were just winning business, and I was putting, I was like having to hire teams in order to service it. So we were so in the moment that I actually didn't realize the full business risk. Actually then understanding how do I take a step back as the CEO of the business and understand where are the risk factors? I worked with some outside consultants to help me with this. Where are the factors that if I don't focus on now, within the next 3 to 6 months, they'll put us out of business? I hadn't invested enough in our financial team, for example. I had one person with a few support staff. Now I've got a full finance function. So there were areas that I didn't know. So from a business standpoint, you have to be able to move very quickly. From a mindset standpoint, as you progress, you have to let go of the person you were before. And you have to let go of your ego, because you're going to get a lot of stuff wrong. You're going to have to listen to other people, definitely other people that have been there, done that, and if you can find the right people to mentor you or get advice from. If I went through that process of growth in the business and said, I know what to do, I know how to fix this problem, I know where we need to go. How do I know any of these things? I've never done it before. Every day I'm waking up, I'm like, I've never run a business of this size before, and then the next day I've never dealt with this problem before. Yeah. Every day was like this. So you have to approach it from a position. You have to be humble in terms of how you approach. Okay, like great, we've got to here, but if you look back on the things that you've achieved and you think, okay, I've achieved all those things, I'll be able to figure the next problem out. The reality is you have to believe in yourself, but you have to take on board information, and you have to be able to make clear decisions, which we were speaking about earlier, and decision making is so paramount in everything that we do, right? And I think if there's one real takeaway for the listeners, an area of my life that I have spent so much time trying to understand and trying to improve, it's the ability to make a better decision, because we're making thousands of these decisions a day. Some of them are super impactful, and some of them are, what are we going to eat for breakfast? But those impactful decisions, if you can improve those by even 10%, if you compound that month on month on month, your life will be so vastly different. Understanding why you make the decision that you do is where you need to start. So sometimes that's ego. We spoke about, like, if the ego shows up and says, I am X, Y, and Z. I am, in my case, the CEO of the company, and therefore what I say in the management meeting has to be the way that it is. Meanwhile, I've got some very, very smart, very experienced people in front of me. Like, I wouldn't still be in business. You have to walk into that room thinking, okay, we need to solve a problem together. This is the little bit that I know about it. What do you guys know about it? Let's all talk about it. How do we think that this is the right route? Obviously, a decision needs to be made at the end of that meeting, but making sure that you're gathering the right information from the right places, and understanding that what is your process of making a clear decision? Is ego showing up and affecting it? Are you trying to fit in with other people? There's a social element of it. There are so many reasons why you can be influenced into making a wrong decision for you based on your past. Are you working on insecurities that are showing up? Is someone triggering you? Do you want to be perceived to be something? So therefore, are you going to make a decision because deep down inside you there's that little child that's trying to protect itself? So is that leading you to make a decision that isn't right for the group of people that are putting their trust in you? So really spending time internally with myself to say, okay, I've got a lot of big decisions to make. How am I making them? And making sure that I'm not putting myself into that process from an ego standpoint or an insecurity standpoint. One of the things that's helped me through life and through this process and through some difficult times is disassociating me as the individual, as Tom, with my role as the CEO of the company. I've had to navigate the business through some really difficult challenges, right? Yep. So whether that be through downscaling, whether that be through COVID times, whether that be through a lot of things that have happened around the Middle East, right? Now we have a very multicultural group of people, and there's been some real challenges in the Middle East over the years. How have I navigated those? So sometimes I'll disassociate myself as what I want to do, my feelings, all of these things, with what does my role require? What does the CEO of this business need to do today in order to be the best for the group of people that are putting the trust in them? Not Tom. I've got nothing to do with it at this point. And that has really helped me, because it's allowed me to remove all of my biases, remove all of my feelings from what needs to be done. So let's flip that into the listeners, whether it's how they show up at work in terms of going into a meeting. Are there personal differences with other people in the room, with peers? So all of that stuff can really cloud how we make a decision, how we show up, and therefore how we perform. So if we can disassociate at times, and the individual can walk into that meeting and be like, this isn't me, the individual walking into this meeting. It's me, the role walking into this meeting, and I'm going to be the best I possibly can be in this role. That has really helped me.
Amazing. I'm conscious of time here, and I'm getting not here. It obviously I have to bring up, and I'd love for us to end over the next 5 minutes or so. You spoke heavily about mindset and the importance of decision making and how emotions and mindset control that state. You've achieved some phenomenal things with your fitness, with ultras. I mean, share with the listeners what you've done and how important is your health, your fitness, when it comes to building that resilience. So what's the parallels with looking after you in terms of align with success with business?
Yeah.
And if you can talk about, just because I would want to pack it in before we go, that and family, how do you balance, how do you use fitness as a tool to improve your mindset towards business, and how do you factor that in with a family as well?
Okay, there's a lot to cover in a few minutes.
I know.
I'll whistle stop tour. So look, endurance and ultramarathons are a huge part of my life.
Yep.
They give me a focus for everything that I do from a health and fitness standpoint. I've been lucky to go on some incredible journeys. It started around sort of 10, 11 years ago, something like that, with the Marathon des Sables. So I've done the Marathon des Sables twice, which is, for those that don't know, it's 250 kilometers across the Sahara Desert. Yep. Self-supported, you carry everything that you need for that period. So I did the Marathon des Sables across the Sahara, and then also across the desert in Peru. I've done single stage 140k ultramarathons across the mountains nearby, 230k through the Arctic, the ice ultra through northern Sweden in February, down at sort of minus 30 degree temperatures. So some really interesting stuff. It goes back to the adventure thing. It's not about the running; it's about the adventure, right? So, and then, look, there's a list of that stuff, but they all kind of follow the similar vein. And I absolutely love it. I love the getting yourself to the point of breaking and really seeing, like, okay, how do I respond? My back's against the wall. I'm pushing myself to my absolute limit. What is your answer? And that's why that's something that's deeply personal. To answer the second part of your questions, much of what happens in life is noise, right? And I think one of the things specifically about ultramarathons, that it teaches you that the only thing that matters is the thing that stops you from going from A to B. It's very simplistic. You just need to move from A to B. And there are many things that are going to happen with life is busy, and this really simplifies for the period of time that you're in that race. Sometimes it's a day, sometimes it's 5 days, whatever it is. It simplifies life down into just very simple steps of moving forward. Now, what I've taken from that back into the world of business is, and this was a profound change from the first race with the Marathon des Sables that I did. I came back into business, I was like, wow, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on in the office. There's people coming to my office. Okay, this is on fire. I need a decision on this. There's a lot of noise all the time, and everyone has this in their career or however they spend their time from a career standpoint. There's very few things that are actually important, very few, and often my role is to listen to everything that's coming at me, because there are different problems in different parts of the business, and identifying the one thing which could be 2 rows back, quite quiet. That's the thing that's going to bring the house down if I don't deal with it. Not necessarily the thing that's in my face, that's barking at me because this person is, it could be the one at the back. So my job in my role is to make sure that I'm identifying the right problems to focus on. Quite often we get caught up in the noisiest, the loudest, the things that are right in front of us, or the things that we feel are most timely. So that has allowed me to develop a process of how I manage my life, which is understanding everything that we've got coming at us and really prioritizing, like hyper prioritizing, so that I can have the most leverage all the time. You go back to the original questions, how am I doing so many different things?
Yeah, with like family and kids.
Because I say no to so many things.
Okay, brilliant.
I say no to so much stuff, and sometimes that's not always well received, but the reality is, if I'm trying to achieve certain things that I've defined that I want, then I have to understand what am I saying no to, and what are the highest leverage activities for me to achieve what it is that I want to achieve. So that's the second thing in terms of prioritizing. And the third thing, in terms of resilience, like, life is hard for all of us. Going through the process of training and experiencing ultramarathons and being in really harsh environments and deserts and the Arctic and these types of things, I put myself in those environments because I want to create an experience that is very difficult, that the only way to survive it is by being highly resilient. Life is hard for all of us. Everybody has a lot coming at them. Everybody has difficult times that they're going to go through. There is sickness, there is everything. We're all going to go through very difficult times in life. So for me, my mindset around that is, if we know that, what are we doing about it? Do we hope that life isn't too difficult, so that when we get to those difficult times, we can kind of navigate through them? But like, hope's not a strategy, right? How do we make sure that we're building a resilient mindset, so when these inevitable things happen to us, we're in the best position that we can be, for not just for ourselves, but now you and I have both got families, right? Yeah. So how do we show up in the right way when a tough time happens, financially, emotionally, whatever it might be, that we are pillars of strength for those that need us. So for me, going through ultra marathons is artificially creating an environment that is very difficult, that is very harsh, and that the only way you can survive and thrive in that environment is to build a mental resilience. You can't think your way into mental resilience. You can't read a book and be mentally resilient. You have to go through difficult, challenging experiences, whether that's in the gym. You don't have to go and run through the Arctic. It could be in the gym. But you have to put yourself in those environments repeatedly, so that you start to, Goggins talks about callousing the mind. It's very, very true. Like you slowly build this resilience into your mind that will show up when you need it. And for me, that's what that does. So that has then helped in business, because building a business is very difficult. You go through existential crisis often. You'll be looking, I think the whole thing is going to come down after 10 years of work, and less of that now, fortunately, but going through the process, that happens a lot. We've all gone through breakups that we think are the end of the world. We've all have family members that are sick or will have that challenge. So for me, building that resilient mindset has allowed me to show up how I've wanted to show up in those situations.
Amazing, Tom. I'm going to have to get you on again. You're an absolute god. But
I really appreciate that.
What is your mission in sort of one or two sentences now? What's your mission, and where can people find you?
It can come across the wrong way, but it shouldn't. I want the world to be a better place because I was here. Super simplistic. I hope it doesn't come across as arrogant, because it's not how I mean it to be. But I want to look back when I'm hopefully in my 80s, touch wood, and to feel that the world is slightly better because I existed, and that I was able to that I was able to give to the world more than I took.
Amazing. And where can people find you?
Instagram's a good one. LinkedIn's a good one. At Tom Otton on Instagram. LinkedIn, similar, just Tom Otton. If it's business on LinkedIn, if it's anything else on Instagram, I'm happy to chat to people. So please, don't be shy to reach out.
Mate, thank you so much. I know we had to squeeze in a lot there. I'd love to get Tom on again. Thank you so much, Tom. And thank you for listening, everybody. And I'll see you next time.
Real pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.